Welcome, Wanderers, to the first ever Masters of Sanctuary Clipcast. I'm your host, Cliptis, and I am here today with a Diablo IV world record holder, a speedrunner, and a creator of some immensely interesting and very fun off-meta builds, introducing Crimsoncast. Crimson, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm very excited to sit down with you. We're going to talk about some of the world records that you have, how that happens, and maybe how somebody out there can achieve some of those too. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about yourself, why you game, and then what makes Diablo the game for you.
So my name is Crimson. My Twitch channel is twitch.tv/crimsoncasts, but I go by Crimson. I grew up loving games. I grew up in a very modest income household. I'm one of 4 siblings. So I got a Nintendo 64 several years after it came out, and this was like the marquee Christmas gift of my childhood. I was born in 95. The 64, I believe, came out in 96, and I didn't get one until 2002. So sort of tells you where I was.
Yep.
And I have 2 older brothers, one of whom is very non-competitive, and one of whom is hyper-competitive. And he and I...
Gotcha.
Super Mario 64, Smash Brothers 64, childhood Saturdays, that's where it started.
Great games.
As far as how I got into Diablo, there are sort of 2 or 3 sort of core elements of how I got into the franchise. One is I have a bunch of older cousins. My mom is the 7th of 8 children. So when I was middle school age, I had a bunch of college-aged cousins in the early to mid 2000s, and they were Diablo 2 players. And I remember going over to my cousin's house in Maryland and watching my college-aged cousin kill Bale. And I remember thinking that was super cool. Partially because I wasn't allowed to play adult-rated video games, and I was like 10. And oh my god, the gore, the blood, and the guts, and the everything else.
Yeah.
And then I got into Diablo for myself much later. In the mid-2010s, I started watching a lot of Diablo 2 speedrunning. I don't know if you'll know the names, but people like Mr. Llama and Gymnasium and Kano and people like that. I remember watching live Mr. Llama's run at GDQ in, I believe, 2016 was his first run.
Nice.
And then the way I came into Diablo 4, I played it on launch a little bit, like everyone else did. I played Season 0, and then I didn't play Season 1, 2, or 3, like, at all.
Okay. Yeah.
What happened was I'm a passionate and fiercely competitive but deeply mediocre esports player. Like, I'm bad at Dota, but I love it. Okay. I'm like, for anyone who plays Dota, I'm Archon. I'm not good. Okay.
Gotcha.
But I was really, really involved in this league where I was playing weeknight organized 5v5 Dota.
Okay.
And I was dedicating so much to it and not improving. And anyone who's ever played esports knows that you when you're not winning, it can't be me. It has to be my teammates.
Of course. Oh, yeah. Of course it's them.
It's just. So that led to a lot of fractiousness because other people would blame other people and I would blame other people. And there was a lot of disagreement about how the team should proceed. So I wanted a competitive outlet that was more supportive as a community, because esports, no matter what you're playing, people are very competitive. But speedrunners tend to be hyper competitive and super fixated, but very encouraging of each other. Like if you go into the Twitch stream of someone who's speedrunning Super Mario for the first time ever, and you know the names of Mario runners, and you just watch their chat, you'll find world record holders who've been to GDQ and performed on big main stage events, showing up and giving tips to amateurs. And speedrunning is hyper competitive, but super, super supportive. And I've just found it to be a much healthier competitive outlet for me personally, as I've gotten into it over the last year and a half at this point that I've been very, very dedicated to Diablo 4 speedrunning.
That is very cool. That is awesome. Okay, so for the next question that we got, and I know that you get to play into this a lot, meta builds have been very slightly controversial, just in the sense that a lot of people swear off playing them. How do you feel about this whole meta versus off meta thing?
How do I feel about meta versus off meta?
Yeah.
It depends. It depends who's asking and for what reason. For myself, I'm not going to break a world record unless I'm using a meta build. If I'm trying to kill Torment 4 Lilith as fast as possible, I'm going to do it on a Bloodwave Necro.
Right.
Or the previous world record was on a Quill Volley Spiritborn.
Okay.
Tells
Makes
you
sense.
where you are.
Yeah.
And that was last season. But
Mhm.
if someone comes into my chat and they ask, "Hey, I want a build. What should I play?" It depends. It really does. What do you think is fun? I happen to think that having a build that has like a ton of on-screen effects and like really interesting audio design and that has some interesting complexity in how to pilot the build itself, that's what I enjoy playing. Other people enjoy logging on and blasting.
Yep.
Or if there's someone who's new to the game, I might recommend a build where if they didn't quite read the build guide so closely and they forget an aspect where they can't find the perfect gear, I might recommend something that's easier to get online. But do I care what anyone else is playing? Not really, because 95% of the time that I'm playing alone. And most of the time when I'm talking about meta builds, it's helping other people understand a build guide that I didn't even write. So,
Makes sense.
so long as
Yeah.
people are having fun, I don't really care what anyone's playing.
Fun is absolutely the most important part about gaming. And I think a lot of people end up losing that a little bit, especially when they are trying to be the strongest or get the highest thing. And we game for fun. So I think that's a really, really good point.
I think that, what game designer was it? Maybe you'll remember. There's this famous quote. Maybe it's from Sid Meier of the Civ, like the game designer of the Civ Civilization games. But it was, given sufficient time, the player base will optimize the fun out of anything.
That is absolutely
I can't
true.
remember if that, I may be misattributing that quote. Someone
No.
will have to look it up and tell us in the YouTube comments. But that's how I think about it quite a bit of the time.
I'm pretty sure that that was pretty spot on, at least close enough. So for the next question here, I think you answered a little bit of this because it was going to be what would be the main class to suggest for somebody to use for speedrunning. But it sounds like you choose meta builds for the speedrunning, or is it broken down into different categories?
So I want to be very clear about what I mean when I say I'm a speedrunner, because this means many things in the Diablo IV community. Some people, when they think of speedrunning, think of the helltides.com pit push leaderboards. That's not what I do. I'm not uninterested in that. I just don't compete in that. I also don't mean the Horn of Trials gauntlet system. There are wonderful creators who I respect deeply who go really far into the pit. There are wonderful people who compete in the Horn of Trials, and that's not what I do. I compete on the speedrun.com leaderboards. Speedrun.com is a wonderful community website where leaderboards are hosted for a variety of different games. And on speedrun.com, right now we have 3 main categories: the base game campaign, the expansion campaign, and running from character creation to killing Torment 4 Lilith. We may add more categories, but right now it's a small community and we don't want to divide things too much.
I think they're good metrics, though.
Things are tracked based on hardcore versus softcore, based on class, and based on seasonal versus eternal. So there are 6 classes times hardcore and softcore, which is 2, times seasonal eternal, which is another 2, times 3 categories is 72 different categories.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
There's a lot going on there. If someone were to start speedrunning and they wanted to do 1 to Lilith, which is the one that I think there's the most public interest in, you have to pick a build that's easy to get online and that you feel comfortable using. So in the current season, that's Bloodwave Necro. In other seasons that's been Quill Volley Spiritborn, right now there's probably a Druid build that can get there. For the campaign, it's very, very, very different. The campaign is a hyper-specialized discipline, and the approach to speedrunning the campaign is very, very class-dependent.
For the campaign, real quick, just if you're going to speedrun a campaign, do you skip the dialogue and the cutscenes?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
You skip as much as the game allows you to do so. And there are right now there are not any major known glitches, but there are things you can do to like avoid certain escort quests and things like that. If you're going to speedrun the campaign for the very first time, you're going to play a minion necro because Minion Necro has the least amount of advanced movement tech that you will need to memorize. If you play a class like Sorcerer with Teleport, or Barbarian with Charge and Leap, or Spiritborn with Soar, you're going to need to learn how to place your mouse really precisely to be able to teleport through walls that have pixel-perfect gaps. That's not the case with Necro. With Necro, the strategy is run really fast.
Gotcha.
So start with Necro.
Nice and simple. All right. That's cool. So what was your fastest run?
It depends. In the 1 to Lilith category, it was a couple of weeks ago, mysteriously on hardcore. I ran hardcore level 1 to Uber Lilith in 2 hours, 32 minutes.
Nice.
And then
that's very fast.
For the campaign, I believe right now, the fastest of all classes is Sorcerer with a low 230. Like I almost got the 2-2x. I was like this close.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. When you're playing these, are you allowed to use any of the gear that you've collected on other characters?
Nope. I don't touch my stash, in fact.
Okay.
There's a long list of rules, which are very democratically decided, that are posted on the speedrun.com leaderboards. There's been at least one rule that led to vociferous debate before we changed it.
Okay.
But essentially, you start with what you start with. If there are things that your character would naturally have, meaning we expect that most people, when a new season comes out, play the seasonal content. And then if you're a dedicated player, 6 or 8 weeks in, you're finished with your season journey, you've helped all your friends get to Torment 4, and now you're looking for something to do. That's the context we expect speedrunning to occur in. Gotcha. And at that point, your character is already going to have some Obdicite, already going to have some herbs, already going to have some Rawhide. Those sorts of things you can already have. But currency, obols, pale marks, red dust from the BVP system you can't use. And all of this is listed out very, very thoroughly on the speedrun.com leaderboards. Gotcha. And there's also a speedrun Discord where if you have questions, you can ask the moderators of the leaderboards directly.
Okay, that's cool. It's good to have all those resources there to ask. For all of the speedruns that you've done, is there an all-time favorite build that you've sped run with?
Is there an all-time favorite build? So right now I'm like, over the last week, I'm in the lab on a Spiritborn campaign build.
Okay.
And right now I think that will actually mean that Spiritborn ends up being the fastest campaign class if I keep working on it.
Nice.
But as far as campaign builds, playing Sorcerer is very straightforward because Sorcerer was built in a way that's like comically easy to speedrun the campaign with. Teleport is absurdly broken as a campaign speedrunning tool.
Yep.
Even more so than Leap, and even more so than Soar on the Barbarian and Spiritborn. Teleport is like, I don't know exactly what it is, but something is different about the collision physics of where you're allowed to go with Teleport. And you can do some weird stuff, like weird stuff.
Okay.
As far as the like Lilith challenge run, Bloodwave Necro, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's the fastest and it's the easiest.
Okay.
It takes no uniques. As a matter of fact, I didn't have any gear that was above item level 700.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So like from that perspective,
easy.
Very easy.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Do you have, out of the couple seasons that you got into play, I know you missed a couple of them, was there a favorite season that you played?
I caught the very tail end of Season of the Construct. That was when I got back into the game, and I wish I had played all of Season 3. I think that... Actually, you know what? The cheekiest answer? Season 0. Season 0 was the best season. Season 0 was the best season. And partially because I feel quite strongly that the world tier system was better than the torment system. At least as far as the way that you progressed to tiers, I liked those challenge dungeons. And in fact, those were speedrun categories. We tracked records for the fastest person to get into tier 3 and into tier 4. And that was fascinating as a speedrunning meta. And when that went the way of the dodo, we don't have a category that's under an hour right now. So as a beginner, it's impossible. You look at, the world record is 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, it's long.
If I'm playing for the first time trying to do it, like my first Uber Lilith run was 7.5 hours.
Yeah.
As a beginner, that's overwhelming. We don't have a soft ramp for people anymore because the ability to do the cheesy stuff we did to get into Torment 3 at level 15 was crazy.
Right. Yep. I actually left some feedback after this last PTR that the Nightmare Dungeon tier list was a lot of fun as you were leveling.
Yes.
And the Capstone Dungeons, having something like that, felt aspirational. Okay, how early can I get my character to this? And then how ready am I to get my character past this really hard boss fight? It was a lot of fun. When you leveled up past where you were supposed to be at, the fight was very easy. But when you went there early, you actually had a gear check, you had a character check. It was a lot of fun. I definitely agree with you. That was a lot of fun to get through.
Getting the most impressive things I've seen from other speedrunners were the old Necromancer World Tier 4 record was won by a guy named Vitruth, where he defeated a level 70 dungeon at level 29.
Oh, and impressive.
And then also I have to shout out Wonder Puppy 98 is, in my mind, still the best. I hold the current world record, but he's still the best player for the Lilith category. And like, not having the Torment Dungeon stuff to get into World Tier 3 and World Tier 4 is very sad. The pit system is fine for glyph progression and for whatever. But that like mid-game gear check, having a fixed level target was very, very wonderful. I loved it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is your current world record? What are we looking at here?
So, like I said, there are many different categories.
Yep.
I currently hold, I think it's 14 official and verified, and a couple pending verification.
Very nice.
Every category which has a submission, I have gone and beaten it. So far, of all the categories that are non-empty, I hold every world record.
Very nice. That's impressive.
To be clear, there are not that many people
submitting. Of course, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. You have the official title of world record, and that is impressive. No matter what you're doing, no matter how many people are in it, that is still pretty cool to say.
I appreciate it. I think that the latest, to get to your question, the latest thing that I've worked on is a couple weeks ago, the one to Lilith run on Hardcore Necro, and then right now I'm working on Spiritborn campaign routing, is like what I'm practicing and thinking about in my free time.
Well, I'm pretty excited to see. I'll have to check out some of the stuff. So you said it was speedrunning.com?
Speedrun.com/Diablo_IV.
There it is. If you were to give players 3 short tips before they hopped into speedrunning, what would those tips be?
Pick a category that you won't mind running 10 times.
Okay, that's good.
Know that speed leveling and the way I approach the beginning of the season leveling and the way I approach speedrun leveling are very different strategies.
Okay.
Because in the speedrun leveling, I already have all my temper manuals and so on and so forth. So while there are some things that cross over, if you've followed a leveling guide from your favorite content creator, you followed Cliptis' leveling guide, know that there are some tricks related to speed leveling that are very specialized to doing it against a timer, and that it is okay that you will need to practice those things, and you can learn one thing at a time. And the third thing is mobility is more important than damage by a lot. So, like, there's a reason there's a boot on the wall.
Okay. I was going to ask about that later on.
Yellow boot.
We got there.
Find yellow boots. That's the number one thing. Find a yellow boot.
With the movement speed on it. Okay, that makes sense. I like it. I was going to ask, but we got there. That's pretty funny.
So I can explain what this is if you're curious.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I started getting into Diablo IV speedrunning in spring of last year. So that's a little over 12 months ago as of recording. And there are very few Diablo IV speedrunners, especially campaign speedrunners. At the moment, I'm the only person who's actively submitting anything, but there are people who've submitted in the past. And speedrunning the campaign over and over and over and over is a lonely task. It's helpful that now I have a couple of people who are regulars in my Twitch chat, and they keep me company.
Yep.
And I love them for it. But when I first started speedrunning, I had no viewers. I was streaming to 0 people, often in the middle of the night.
Right.
And in a search for community, I started watching other speedrunners on my second monitor while I was speedrunning.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So in the search for community, there are no other Diablo speedrunners, but I wanted the vibe of other people running against the timer.
Yeah.
So I started watching a bunch of Mario speedrunners, and the Mario community had a now defunct event called Pace, where they have a tournament of Super Mario speedrunners during the day with elimination brackets and rounds. And then overnight, to keep the live stream going, they feature runners from smaller speedrunning communities.
Cool.
And I was one of those featured runners, and I knew that I was the only person in the entire ballroom of the hotel that we were at that knew anything about Diablo. So I got a piece of yellow poster board, and I took a big chisel tip Sharpie, this chisel tip Sharpie actually, and I drew a boot, and I went around the room to all these world record holding Super Mario runners and Metroid runners and other people. And I said, hey, my name is Crimson. I speedrun Diablo. You don't know anything about Diablo, that's fine. Just to wish me good luck, could you draw a picture of a shoe and then sign it? Okay. And so this, on the opposite side of this yellow piece of poster board, are like 50 signatures from other speedrunners. Because in the campaign speedrun, you want a very, very, very specific pair of yellow boots very, very, very early on. And if you don't get them, it's not a good thing. Wow. So I was informing people, every item's procedurally generated in this franchise, and you need to find a very specific thing, and you need to find it very, very early on. Yeah. This is what we're looking for. You're looking for yellow boots. And I got everyone to sign it, and it was my good luck totem. And then on main stage, I did not find a single pair of yellow boots the entire time, let alone finding them early. But everyone at least knew what we were looking for.
That is very cool. Honestly, that is a very cool story. I like how you got everybody involved, even including outside of the game. That is very awesome.
I was the only Diablo player at the event, and there were 100 people watching, and none of them played Diablo.
That's okay. Yeah, but you still found a way to connect the communities, which was very cool.
Yeah. I'm aware that I sit in the very narrow sliver of the speedrunning and Diablo community. Yeah. So I'm in a narrow sliver of that Venn diagram.
Yeah, well, that's okay. As long as you're having fun, that's the most important thing. So finally, and this is the real money question here, how do you feel about the state of the game and where it's heading in the future?
I premeditated some of these questions. You didn't share a question list with me or anything, but I knew that some state of the game question might be asked. I don't know. Part of the reason that I like the campaign so much is because I love Diablo for its world building and its lore. At this point, I think it's incontrovertible. Diablo has the best design for angels in all of fantasy RPGs.
Yeah, it's amazing.
No one looks as cool as an Arius.
No, it's awesome. It really is good.
I'm the game balance, not in terms of build versus other build and build diversity. I think Season 7 has been great for build diversity, actually. I think we could have a roundtable argument about which one of 6 or 7 different builds is actually the best build for a new player to play.
Yep, I agree.
Is it an Earthquake Barb or a Bloodwave Necro or a Cataclysm Druid or a Rain of Arrows Rogue or this and that? And well, those all have different gear requirements, and some of them require you to snapshot and some of them don't. I think we're in a good place for build diversity. I'm not happy with where we are with boss difficulty. And I'm not at all happy. In fact, I'm deeply frustrated with the pit as an endgame system.
Okay.
I've watched the last couple of campfires actively, and the idea that the game would be balanced around the pit, or in fact that the fact that the pit is the primary endgame scaling thing that exists at all, is frustrating to me.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because I think they've reversed the instrumental and terminal goals of the game, if that makes sense, if you're familiar with the idea of an instrumental and a terminal goal. And so I don't want to kill a boss so I can get a higher number in the pit.
Okay.
Right? I don't want to kill Varshon to get a ring I need so I can go get a higher pit number. That doesn't make sense to me. I want to push the pit so I can get the glyph level so I'm able to kill the boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And right now it seems to me to be the case. Like, there have been comments made on the dev streams where it seems to me that it's been missed. And this is people have different ideas of what the primary endgame activity should be, but I've never heard a single person go, I love grinding the pit for 100 hours to hit Paragon 300.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's there are many good solutions, and I don't think that that's one of them. And that's something that I think is being softly addressed with the reworks to the boss ladder in Season 8. Yep. I have some concerns about the boss ladder in Season 8 that I think are quite specialized to being someone who has a Twitch chat.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, I want to be able to carry people and use my materials and give them the items that they need so they can have fun because they have less time than I do, or because they aren't as comfortable in the game as I am.
Right.
And the fact that there's new friction there, yes, I understand that 95% of the player base is neither a Twitch streamer nor a Twitch viewer who's in the sort of free-for-all boss rotations that you host, for example.
Right, yep.
I understand that there's substantial friction in the, in-game trade chat when people are offering boss rotations and people don't pay their fair share. But for me personally, as someone who likes giving away boss runs,
right,
it didn't solve my problem.
No.
And I don't think that introducing the Horn of Trials and then taking it away is a good thing. I don't think that both root holds and hordes are interesting roguelite mechanics that are not pushed to the limit of what they could be. I miss Nightmare Dungeon 100s being whatever it is. The thing I miss the most is area levels. Dynamic scaling when the game came out was a huge mistake because now there's no reason for me to level up if everything levels with me.
Mm-hmm.
If a boss is level 80 and I'm level 65 and I can't do it, and then I grind and get more gear and I'm level 75 and now I can do it, that gives me a motivation to grind from 65 to 70.
Right.
But if the boss scales up as I scale up, if anything, there are certain parts in the speedrunning where I deliberately underlevel myself before certain fights because the boss scaling and my level scaling are different. And it's actually easier at a lower level, which is backwards of what I think is good game design. Especially for something that should be motivating me to grind. So I'm very frustrated with a number of... I love the core content. I love the IP. I'll play the game. I am frustrated with a long laundry list of balanced decisions in the game. And some of them are quite specialized to being a speedrunner. Some of them are quite specialized to being someone who has a modest Twitch following. And some of it is just as a general player. I don't think that area scaling is good, and I don't like the pit as an endgame system.
Right.
So
yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we should be getting our campfire chat coming up soon, so we'll get to see what's going to be happening there, and a roadmap. So we'll get to see what's going to happen there. Maybe we'll see when the new expansion pack is coming out next year. Maybe some big changes then. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm pretty excited to see what we get in the future, and they seem to be listening a lot. And what seems like a lot more. They're changing their approach to how they're adjusting the game, So we'll see. We'll see what the future brings. Time will only tell. I think a big indicator will be how they take the feedback from this PTR specifically and then implement it into the actual patch that's coming. But that was all I got. Before we hop off of this call, I want to say thank you for being here. And I want to take this time to let everybody know, tell them where they can find you, what you got going on in your content creation life right now.
So the easiest way to find me is twitch.tv/crimsoncasts. I'm live most days of the week. If there is not a timer on my screen, then I am probably doing something casual and it's, Diablo IV community content. If there is a timer on my screen, I'm probably reading chat a little bit less and working a little harder.
Mm-hmm.
I have a YouTube channel, Crimson D4 Speedrunning, which is mostly for storing the VODs of various world records for long-term archival purposes. But if you want long form, what does it look like to beat the entire campaign in 2 hours and 35 minutes? That's there.
Seems interesting.
But the biggest thing would definitely be the Twitch, TTV/Crimsoncasts.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Cannot wait to see you all on the next episode of Masters of Sanctuary. Thank you again, Crimson, for being here. Catch you all on the clip side.
See ya.